Continuing debate, the honourable member from Peterborough, Kawartha.
Hey. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon. As always, it is an honour and a privilege to stand in the House of Commons to represent the constituents of Peterborough, Kawartha. Today I rise to speak to the Conservative Opposition Day motion calling on the Liberal government to eliminate its upcoming plan to triple the carbon tax. Now, for those unaware, an Opposition Day is set aside a block of time on certain House sitting days when the opposition, the Conservative Party, can set the agenda. Most days, the government sets the agenda. Today is our day to fight for you, Canadians. And every day, but today especially when we ask them to end tripling the carbon tax. Today especially. When Canadians are facing record-high inflation, a cost of living and mental health crisis, and a growing housing affordability crisis, an increase in the carbon tax completely lacks the compassion Canadians need and deserve at this time. This increase will mean that Canadians will pay more for groceries and home heating and add up to 40 cents a litre to the cost of gas. Let me repeat that, Mr. Speaker. 40 cents a litre to the price of gas. Fueling your vehicle isn't a luxury to Canadians and the constituents in my riding of Peterborough, Kawartha. For many, it's essential to get to work, school, to pick up groceries, and to take your kids, if you have any, to hockey practice, taekwondo, dance, and all of their other sporting activities, if you can even afford to put them in it. Now, one of the biggest lessons we've learned from this pandemic, Mr. Speaker, is that rural and urban Canadians have very different needs. Yet this Liberal government continues to punish those who have to drive to work or plough their field to feed us. The carbon tax disproportionately impacts those in rural ridings who do not have a choice in transportation. Now, the government argues that individuals will receive a carbon tax rebate. That's their claim to fame. You're going to get some of this money back.
Don't worry.
But, Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer reported the carbon tax costs 60% of Canadian households more than what they get back in tax rebates. As I've said many times in this House, our current affordability crisis is a mental health crisis, and the two cannot be separated. Now, this week, the CBC published its first-person column, which amplifies personal stories that reflect contemporary Canada. Now, in the column, Danielle Barnsley shares the actual cost of the current affordability crisis. Listen to this. This is, quote, "Slowly, I watched the prices rise at the grocery store. The rising cost of gas. At first, I thought it was just me, not pinching pennies enough. It wasn't. I canceled subscriptions. I stopped eating out. When my kids are with their dad, I don't leave my house so that I can save gas money. It's like living in lockdown, but from poverty rather than the fear of the virus. I live off whatever non-perishables I have in the house, and somehow I've cut my grocery bill by 75%, but that has meant not getting as many healthier foods. The amount of fresh fruits and vegetables I buy has dwindled because it's simply not affordable. I've accessed the food bank sometimes when there just isn't enough. I can speak from personal experience as well. In my riding of Peterborough, Kawartha, when I drive by the Salvation Army, which is an incredible organization, the lineup every day is longer and longer for people accessing food banks. She also goes on to quote, "My kids come first, my bills come next, and I go last. Every nickel is accounted for. Every dollar is placed towards something. Yet even with all the ways I scrimped and saved, it hasn't helped. It used to be paycheck to paycheck, now it's paycheck to 10 days before paycheck. The average family of four is spending over $1,200 more each year to put food on the table. Grocery prices are up by 10.8%, the highest rate since 1981. Across the board, food prices are up by 9.8%. Nearly half of Canadians, are within $200 of insolvency. Mr. Speaker, taxing Canadians when they cannot afford to feed themselves or their family is not addressing climate change. It is causing further suffering and adding to our current mental health crisis. Canadians by nature are very good neighbours. We are kind people, we care about our country and our earth. But let's be honest, Mr. Speaker, we must meet people where they are. How can someone be the best parent, be the best partner, be the best employee, or the best steward of the land if they are barely surviving? We need to meet Canadians where they are at and invest in technology that fights climate change, not triple an ineffective carbon tax. There are so many solutions and alternatives that we have presented in this House, yet no other party except the Conservatives are supporting these solutions. Small nuclear reactors, SMRs, regenerative farming, carbon capturing, investing in our own clean oil rather than dictator oil. Mr. Speaker, we can do so much better than tripling a carbon tax that doesn't work.
That's right.
Canadians are tired of the false promises of this Liberal government. Canadians cannot trust this Liberal government. That's right. They promised the carbon tax would never go above $50 a ton. Never.
Never.
And yet here we are, right now, fighting to stop 3 times that amount. As Member of Parliament, it is my duty to bring the voices of Peterborough Kawartha directly to this House. So I asked my constituents how the current cost of living crisis is impacting their day-to-day lives, and here are some of their stories. Kevin, as a small business owner, I've had to up my rates to compensate for the insane diesel prices. That hurts my clients while cutting into our profit margins, which were slim to start with. I'm making less, clients are paying more, and that is how inflation grows and grows. Raising fuel costs hurts all Canadians, no matter how badly they want us to switch to electric vehicles. They simply aren't practical. Farming needs diesel, construction needs diesel, trucking needs diesel. This entire nation revolves around diesel. When it goes up, everything does. Mr. Speaker, let's acknowledge that we have a housing crisis. We have over 300 people right now in my riding of Peterborough Kawartha who don't even have a home. If these costs, if this carbon tax is driving up the cost to build a home, how is that going to help our housing crisis? How is that going to help get more houses built? More quotes. Rent prices have gone crazy, $2,500 plus utilities. How do people afford to eat after they pay rent and utilities? No wonder mental illness is at an all-time high. People are stressed out. I just switched from wood to propane as I do it all on my own and not getting any younger. $1,500 a month to keep it at 58 degrees. On top of everything else going through the roof, I guess I will keep working 60 hours or more a week to make ends meet. More. As a 2 small business owners family, it's a struggle. Hard to make ends meet, but we take on extra jobs and become overworked. There's nothing else you can do. And here's another quote. Most of us aren't managing. We're sinking. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about the future of this country, how do you think these stories are impacting our children? When their parents are at the dinner table, so stressed, if there is even dinner, how does that impact the children in our country? This week, a local news outlet in my riding reported that post-secondary students were looking to access shelters and being turned away due to overcapacity. And a student was asking for advice about whether sleeping in a vehicle in Peterborough was safe. We have university and college students who cannot find housing. They are going to shelters that are already over capacity. And they want to triple the carbon tax. Mr. Speaker, we can do so much better than this. Canadians from coast to coast to coast are struggling with record-breaking inflation rates, with no hope for the future that if they work hard and save reasonably, they'll be able to get afford a house, feel comfortable, and financially secure. The hope of home ownership has gone out the window for our younger generation. Today, Conservatives urge this House to do the right thing, to meet Canadians where they are at, to give them the break they need, and to scrap this upcoming tripling of the carbon tax. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Question et commentaire. The honourable member for Don Valley East.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for the for her statement. And there were some very compelling points in there around the challenges that people are going through. I know in my riding of Don Valley East, people are going through a very challenging time, and the member did speak about bringing voices into this House. and standing up for affordability issues. So my question to the member is, will she be supporting a $1,300 dental care plan for young people and the $500 subsidy that will really help children in your riding that you reference and the voices you speak for in this House?
Don't forget about running. Don't forget about running things through the chair. The you back and forth. The honourable member for Peterborough Kawartha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the colleague across the way for the question. It is important to note what we are here to discuss today, and that is an affordability crisis. And the more we spend, the more that drives up the cost for people to live. There is no trust, as I mentioned in my speech as well, Mr. Speaker. A program designed to give free things. How do we trust a government that said they would never take the carbon tax above 50 tons? We are at they are positioning it at triple that. So, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to fight for Canadians, their mental health, and to be able to afford to eat and live. Thank you.
Question et commentaire, questions and comments. L'honorable député de Shefford.
The honourable member for Shefford. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for Peterborough Kawartha. We work together on the Standing Committee on the Status of Women. I disagree with her today. She talked about greenwashing, green oil. In fact, my partner is an expert on this. He gives entire lectures on how those two words don't go together, green and oil. The Granby Community Group organized a march recently for the environment. If I set a goal, for example, to lose weight, but then I eat McDonald's for years and years, and then you take the money that you've saved from McDonald's and then buy salad or go to the gym. So it's illogical. It just punts the problem down the road. We need to solve the problem now. What the Conservatives are proposing for the environment is, as usual, a fake solution to a real and much more complex problem.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for the question. I think there are a lot of solutions that we can look at when we're talking about climate change, and it's investing in technology, not taxing people. As we've heard from many colleagues on this side of the House, this tax is not saving anyone. So why aren't we looking at small modular reactors? Why aren't we looking at regenerative farming? Why aren't we looking at sustainable farming? And why aren't we investing in local products here in Canada rather than relying on dictator oil? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. Question commentaire. The honourable member for South Okanagan West Kootenay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Peterborough Kawartha for her speech. She's also the Conservative critic for tourism. I'm the NDP critic for tourism. Here we are on World Tourism Day, so I thought I'd point that out. But, you know, this whole debate around the carbon tax as if it's what's driving up the price of gas that Canadians are rightfully concerned about. The price of gas, I was just in Vancouver, the price of gas was $2.33 a litre. 11 cents of that is carbon tax. The big increase over the last year, like $1, it came a bit from the world price on oil and mostly from greed, mostly from big oil and gas companies seeing an opportunity, seeing world prices go up, and so they inflated that price many times over. The NDP is the only party here that I see that is proposing a real solution to that, and that is taxing that greed, putting a windfall tax on big oil and gas companies so that we can create funding for all the good things that she mentioned.
For Peterborough Kawartha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and happy World Tourism Day. Thank you for pointing that out to my honourable colleague. I think when we look at tripling the carbon tax, it still doesn't have any justification. There's no logic there behind that. Why are we not investing in the technology? There are solutions. 40 cents a litre of gas on top of what you're already paying is just not achievable. Canadians are hanging on by a thread. And if we really want to look at our future and our mental health crisis and this opioid and addiction crisis, we need to take care of what's in Canadians' bank accounts and let them be able to buy food and afford groceries. Thank you so much.